She stood outside in the cold, clothes torn, hands shaking, filled with hunger and hope. All she wanted was a bottle of milk, not for herself, but for her baby brother crying back home. She had no money, no family, and no reason to believe anyone would help her. Yet she stepped inside a wealthy man's store, looked up at him with trembling lips, and whispered words he would never forget. "I promise. I'll pay you when I grow up." Most would have kicked her out, laughed, turned away. But what he did sparked a chain of events so powerful that it would come back to him 20 years later in a way that would leave the world in tears. This isn't just a story about milk. It's about a forgotten girl, a silent act of mercy, and a promise that changed both of their lives forever. It was a cold, rainy evening in a quiet American town. It's a kind of day when people hurry home, clutching their coats, avoiding eye contact, and staying in there. Warm little worlds, but near the corner of Maplewood and 6th Street, stood a little girl no more than 8 years old, wet, shivering, and holding an empty paper cup. Her clothes were torn, her shoes didn't match, and her big brown eyes. They weren't just looking for kindness, they were begging for it. She wasn't asking for money, not candy, not a toy. She was asking for a glass of milk. Just milk, because her baby brother was hungry. Her mother hadn't come home in 2 days. She went from door to door, store to store, whispering the same line, "Please, I promise I'll pay you back when I grow up." Most people ignored her. Some looked the other way. One woman pulled her child closer and shut the car door quickly as if kindness was contagious, and she didn't want to catch it. Then she reached the tall glass door of a fancy grocery store. Clean floors, bright lights, security cameras everywhere. And behind the counter stood a man in a crisp suit, mid-40s, sharp, controlled. His name, Mr. Parker, a self-made millionaire, owner of 3 local stores, respected in the town, feared by many. He was known for never giving credit, never making exceptions, and never trusting anyone who couldn't pay. When the girl stepped inside, her eyes widened. So much light, so much food, so much warmth. But what caught her attention was a single bottle of milk sitting on the shelf. She picked it up, slowly, almost reverently, like it was made of gold. She walked to the counter, trembling, holding that bottle like it was her baby. And when she reached Mr. Parker, she said the words she'd repeated all day. "Please, sir, I don't have any money, but I'll pay you when I grow up, I promise." Mr. Parker looked down at her dirt-streaked face, at the oversized jacket barely clinging to her shoulders, at the bottle of milk clutched tightly in her hands. The man behind her in line scoffed. A woman in the aisle whispered, "Ooh, not again." But Mr. Parker said nothing. He simply stared. The silence stretched, and then he reached across the counter, and slowly took the bottle from her hands. The girl's lip quivered. Tears began to pool in her eyes. She'd been rejected all day, but this felt different. This felt like a final blow. She turned to leave, but just as her foot stepped toward the DoorDash thump, Mr. Parker placed the milk back into her hands. She froze. "Take it," he said quietly, "and tell your little brother. He doesn't have to go to bed hungry tonight." The girl stared at him, stunned. "But I don't have anything," she whispered. "I can't pay you back." Mr. Parker smiled just barely. "Some debts," he said, "aren't meant to be paid in dollars." And with that, he turned away, and the girl vanished into the night. No name, no thank you. No story, just a memory that stuck in his mind for years. Years passed, the seasons came and went, and life, as it often does, moved on. Mr. Parker never saw that girl again, but sometimes when he locked up the store late at night or when the wind howled through the streets during a winter storm, he'd remember her eyes, big, brave, but broken. He didn't tell anyone what he did that day. He didn't expect recognition. He didn't think it was much at all. But deep down, something in him had shifted. He'd spent years building walls, guarding his heart behind money, rules, and silence. But that tiny girl, with her empty hands and hopeful voice, she'd cracked something inside him. Still, he had a business to run, people to manage, deadlines to meet, and so he buried the memory not forgotten. folded quietly into a corner of his soul. It was a regular morning. At the store, Mr. Parker sat at his office desk, flipping through invoices. His coffee was lukewarm, his phone buzzing with reminders. Just another Monday. Then, a letter arrived. A plain white envelope. No name, no return address. Just his store's location, handwritten in neat cursive. He almost threw it away, thinking. It was spam. But something made him open it. Inside was a single piece of paper, folded 3 times, slightly worn. No logo. No company letterhead, just handwriting. Soft, clean, familiar. Almost childlike, but strong. He began to read. Dear Mr. Parker, you probably don't remember me. In fact, I'd be surprised if you did, but I remember you. Was 8 years old, wearing a ripped jacket and 2 different shoes. I came into your store on a rainy night, holding a bottle of milk in my hands. I told you I couldn't pay for it, but that I would when I grew up, and you didn't. Laugh. You didn't turn me away. You gave me hope. And more than that, you gave my little brother dinner that night. That moment changed me. No one else that day treated me like I mattered. No one even looked at me. But you. You saw me. You didn't just hand me milk. You handed me dignity. You reminded me that kindness still existed that night. I promised myself 2 things. I'd grow up and become someone who could pay it forward. I'd find you one day. And thank you. I'm a doctor now, a pediatrician. Every day I help kids like the one I used to be. And every night I remember the man behind the counter who gave me a chance. I never forgot your face. I never forgot your kindness. I don't know if you need money. I don't know if you're still at the same store, but please accept this small token as my way of saying thank you for the milk, for the mercy, the moment that changed everything. With love, the little girl who promised to pay later. Mr. Parker sat frozen. The letter trembled in his hands. His throat tightened. His eyes blurred. This letter, this memory returned to life, had found its way back to him after 2 decades. Attached to the letter was a check. $10,000. He stared at it, not because of the amount, but because of what it represented. A full circle. A debt that was never meant to be paid. Now, returned with love. But the money? It wasn't what moved him. It was the idea. Something he did without thinking, without asking anything in return. It's blossomed into something bigger. Something that lived on in the heart of a little girl. Now a grown woman, changing lives because of one act of human decency. He whispered to himself. She kept her promise. He folded the letter, slowly, placed it in a drawer, and locked it, not to hide it, but to preserve it. A treasure. That letter became something sacred, more than money. More than reputation, it was proof that kindness doesn't vanish. It echoes even across decades. Mr. Parker sat in silence. The letter now safely tucked into his desk drawer, the check untouched, his coffee cold, but his heart warm for the first time in years. He looked around his office. The certificates, the awards, the profit charts on the wall, and realized something deeply unsettling. None of it mattered. Not like that letter. Not like that little girl who remembered a simple act of kindness 20 years later. Instead, he sat alone in the store after hours. No music, no phone. Just silence and reflection. He replayed the moment she first walked in. Her oversized jacket, that trembling voice. I promise I'll pay you when I grow up. Now she had, not just in money, but in purpose, in humanity, in a life saved from bitterness. Just because one man chose compassion, it broke him. Not with sadness, but with a kind of joy that only comes when a soul realizes it mattered. Mr. Parker made a decision. One that would surprise everyone in town. He called a local reporter, then his accountant, then the city registrar. He didn't tell them much, only that he was changing everything in just 6 weeks. The name above his grocery store changed, from Parker's Market to Promise House. The community was confused. Was it a rebrand? A merger? A sale? But no one expected what came next. Right beside the cash registers, where coupons and gum used to sit, stood a large hand-carved wooden box. Above it, a plaque read, If you can't pay today, that's okay. Just promise to give back someday. In honor of a little girl who kept her word, customers were stunned. People whispered. Children stared at the words in awe, and inside that box, milk, bread, canned food, diapers, free, no signatures, no questions. Just trust. Mr. Parker didn't stop there. He launched a scholarship, named it the Future Promise Fund, dedicated to helping underprivileged youth, especially those who had dreams, but no means, and the first award. It went to a teenage boy whose mother had once gone missing for 2 days, leaving him and his sister hungry. Yes, her brother, the baby she carried milk home for that rainy night, was now 18. Applying to college, Mr. Parker had found him quietly. Through contacts, through careful questions, and he kept the meeting private. But when he handed him the scholarship letter, he said only 5 words. Your sister kept her promise. The boy's eyes filled with tears. He hugged Mr. Parker, tightly, silently, and for the first time in decades. Your Mr. Parker cried too, not from grief, but from release. The reporter he had called weeks earlier wrote a piece titled, The Milk That Changed a Life and a Man. People all across the country read it, donated to the fund, shared their own stories of moments when a stranger's kindness saved them. Emails poured in. Letters from other little girls who had once been helped, now grown. Messages from retired teachers, nurses, even single mothers saying, I was her once. And the girl? The one who had written the letter? She didn't expect any of it. She never signed her full name. She didn't want attention. But when she saw the story online, she recognized the store. She recognized the man. And she flew back home. She walked into the store slowly, tears already in her eyes. The box stood there, just like in the article, the plaque with her words. And behind the counter, older now, grayer, stood Mr. Parker. He looked up and saw her. He froze. She smiled. Still holding the letter he once read 100 times, no words were spoken at first, just silence. Just the kind of silence that says everything louder than words ever could. Then, finally, she whispered, I told you I'd pay you back. Mr. Parker smiled, but this time, he didn't hold back the tears. He stepped around the counter and opened his arms. And after 2 decades, the little girl who once begged for milk, and the man who once gave it, hugged like family because they were, not by blood, by name, but by something deeper, by a moment, by a promise, by a kind act that turned into a legacy. Kindness doesn't always come wrapped in glory. Sometimes it walks in quietly, wearing mismatched shoes and carrying nothing but hope. But when we give freely, without expecting return, we plant something eternal. And one day, maybe years later, it comes back to us, multiplied, magnified, and more powerful than we ever imagined. So if someone comes to you and says, I'll pay you back when I grow up, believe them. Because someday, what you did might just leave the world in tears. They stood in the middle of the store, not as a poor girl and a rich man, but as 2 souls connected by a promise, finally fulfilled. No cameras, no applause. Just a quiet embrace, 20 years in the making. She pulled away, tears slipping down her cheeks. You saved me, she said. With 1 bottle of milk, you gave me everything. Mr. Parker shook his head gently. No, he replied, you saved me. He wasn't talking about the money or the success or even the scholarship fund. He was talking about meaning, about the emptiness he'd lived with for years. The silence behind the success, the numbness behind the numbers. That little girl reminded him he had a heart, and now she had returned and filled it. Later that night, Mr. Parker locked the store, same way he had for decades. But this time, he didn't go home to an empty house. He went to a small children's shelter he'd helped fund. There, he served milk to a line of hungry children, smiling, listening, not as a businessman, but as a man reborn. In the weeks that followed, he made one final change. He created a wall inside the store, a collage of faces, photos of kids who had received help from the promise box, And at the center of that wall, under glass, was the letter she wrote, framed, untouched, sacred. Customers would often stop and read it. Some would cry. Some would add their own photos. And many would slip food into the box, quietly, lovingly. It became more than a store. It became a story. A legacy. A place where dignity was given freely. Years later, when Mr. Parker passed away, he left everything, his business, his fortune, his life's work, to the Future Promise Foundation. His funeral was small, but people came from across the country, not for his wealth, but for the warmth he had once given a child with nothing but a promise. And the girl, she still writes a letter every year, addressed simply to the man who believed in me before I believed in myself. She's a mother now. Every night she tells her daughter a story about a rainy night, a bottle of milk, and a man who didn't need a reason to be kind. And the little girl always asks the same thing. Mama, did you ever pay him back? And she always answers, yes, but not with money. With everything I became, one act of kindness. One promise kept can change the world. So the next time someone asks for help, even if they have nothing to offer but hope-give, because someday that moment will come back to you, multiplied, magnified, and remembered forever.